faith, business, legacy. Welcome to Strategies for Success.
Welcome back, guys. Glad to have you guys back.
I'm Travis.
And I'm Tyler, and today we'll be covering defining winning correctly. I know, Travis, you had a pretty good story about this.
We talked about this in season 1 a little bit, but I this was so good I wanted to bring it back. So as a young salesman coming in, and you know how most sales guys are very competitive. You want to make that money, and you got to close that sale to make the money. And so competitive with the sales guys in you, competitive with the salesman down the street with other products. And I had a sales rep come in my office. He's worked together with him now for almost 20 years, and he's a good friend of mine. And he taught me a very valuable lesson that just stuck. And he said, "Hey, I want to share something with you." And he said, "Come over here to your office." So I went in my office, and he took out this piece of paper. And instead of drawing like the normal, design of a tic-tac-toe board, it was an expanded version of a tic-tac-toe board. So it had 10 times the squares. And he said, "This is a new game." I said, "Okay." He said, "Me and you are going to play it." And he said, "I'm going to draw an X, you're going to draw an O. And every time you get 5 in a row, that counts as a score." And then he said, "The cool part with this game is once you get 5 in a row, you can add another 0 on the end and count the next 5 in a row. So you can just keep building onto it." And he said, "We're going to do that. We're going to see who gets the most." And so we sat down, and I started on one corner, and I put an O, he put an X, and we went back and forth. And before long, we'd almost filled the board up. And he said, "Hey, I just want to tell you, I've played this game with a lot of people." And he said, "You're already getting the drift here." He said, "We both are winning at the same time, and I don't have to beat you to win." He said 85% of the people that I do this with, he said they spend the entire game time trying to block the other person from getting that. And you'll notice I didn't say the winner is the person who blocks the most. The winner was the one who got the most in a row. And he said, "Listen, winning doesn't mean winning at your competitor or your friend or, anybody else. It doesn't mean winning at their expense. There is a correct way to win, and there's enough winning to go around for all of us."
Yeah, there is. And a lot of times nowadays, it's pretty tough to not compare yourself to somebody else and not think of everything as a competition. There's a lot of competitive culture that we build, a culture of comparison with one another, where, especially in the age of social media now, and everybody has their phones in their hand, you can constantly see what other people are doing. And we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but social media, most of the time, people are just posting the highlight reel of themselves and the coolest thing they're doing, or seeing it going on vacation, something like that. It's, I've done it myself. It's easy to fall into it, where you see somebody doing something cool, or even like you see one of your competitors on Facebook, and maybe they sold something, they're posting thank you to so and so for a customer, or whatever that may be. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, but sometimes you can spend a lot of time just worrying about that, and you spend so much time worrying about the other people that you don't even focus on yourself and your own personal growth. So that can be a big problem, is if you're only focusing on your competitors, comparing yourself to other people, because there will always be someone that's better than you at whatever it is. I mean, that's just the truth, that there's a lot of people in this world, and there's going to be a lot of people that are better than you at everything.
Yeah, that's true. And, I find myself a lot of times looking at heroes of the faith in the Bible. Noah, who built this ark, and Moses, who led these people and parted the waters with the help of God. And then David, one of my heroes of the faith, who slew the giant. And I got to thinking about that one day. I was like, man, I will never be able to live up to that. And I just sincerely praying about it, and just like, how could I ever be like these guys, these heroes of the faith? And I just felt kind of impressed upon my heart that that's not what God was looking for. He's not looking for a repeat of someone else. that everybody has their own calling. And I was reminded how those stories in the Bible were just like what you said. They're kind of like the highlight reel, right?
Yep.
We see this Goliath that was taken down by this young shepherd boy, but that was one moment in his entire life. And we think I got to live up every day to this one moment in one person's life, and that's the dangerous game of the comparison game.
Oh yeah, and I've done it myself plenty of times where I just get in my own head about stuff and compare myself, and then Travis and I were actually talking about this earlier today, where comparing yourself to somebody in a different stage of life, or there's a lot of variables that make me different from Travis and Travis different from Joe Blow down the street. I mean, you can't always compare yourself to somebody else and the situation that they're in. A lot of times you got to just work with what you got and just try to do the best that you can. And that's where winning correctly, I mean, we have a good Bible verse that goes along with this. So what I think when you talk about winning correctly, you got to think about what is most important to you when you consider it winning. Okay? So the verse that we're going to talk about is Matthew 6:33. Seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. So seek the kingdom of God above all else. So if you seek the kingdom of God above all else and make that your first priority, a lot of the stuff that we worry about on a day-to-day basis really isn't that big of a deal anymore when you think about it like that.
Absolutely. I've watched this movie not too long ago, and it was about the founder of McDonald's and how it started out with these two brothers who had a dream, and they came up with a lot of the process. And the founder there of McDonald's, he's talking to a lawyer, and the lawyer says, "Are you ready to win?" He's like, "Well, yeah, I like to win." He's like, "No, are you ready to win?" And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Are you ready to shove a garden hose down the throat of your drowning competitor?" And he's like, "If that's what it takes to win." And it just hit me. I'm like, I don't want to win that bad. I don't want to win at somebody else's expense. I want to win right. I want to make sure that I'm seeking first the kingdom of heaven, just like what Tyler said. And sometimes I have to catch myself and put myself at check, and say, hey, this is not worth the win. I want to win correctly. And when you do it correctly, the wins come back. It just comes back around.
Yep. And I think ultimately when we talk about the faith and the business and the legacy, talking about they're all dependent on one another in a sense, where if your whole success comes off of seeking the kingdom of God first, as it says in Matthew, then it's not necessarily about making the most money. It's not about selling the most stuff. It's not about a lot of stuff that everybody buying the biggest house, having the nicest car, everything that is a lot of worldly stuff, possessions that make you successful in a sense of comparison to others and comparison to the worldly standards. A lot of that stuff really doesn't matter in the end. And
yeah.
And when it comes down to the end of your life, do you want to think, I won correctly? I did things that seek the kingdom of God first. That's going to be a lot more successful. You're going to feel like you won a lot more than having a lot of money in the bank, because at the end, it does not matter.
I've noticed that when you treat people right, you take care of them. There's been a lot of churches that we've helped, and when it's come back around that I needed help, or a place to host something, they're like, you come do it right here at no charge. And that's what winning should be: building together, not tearing down other people so that you can climb over them to the top.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is, I keep coming back to that verse, but defining what winning even is. I mean, if you say you want to be successful at your business or whatever, well, what does that mean? You got to define that correctly. And I think in the scope of, the way we believe, if we seek the kingdom of God above all else, then a lot of the other stuff will fall into place. And pray and seek for God's guidance as we make the decisions daily. Stay on top of your prayer life and reading the Bible, that a lot of those decisions will be a lot easier, and you'll get guidance and directions from God, so that, even if you're not the most successful year or whatever, you're still successful in the eyes of God and for the kingdom of God.
That wraps it up great with faith, business, and legacy, and defining winning through those three things. I want to win right.
Yep. So we got our challenges now. And here again, we got 3 challenges related to faith, business, and legacy. So for faith, we're going to ask you guys to challenge you guys to read Matthew 6:33 daily and evaluate your alignment. Evaluate your alignment to the kingdom of God and what you're really valuing. A lot of times you can think that you value one thing, or you can say that you value one thing, but when you really stop and ask yourself, be honest with yourself, your actions don't always align with what you think you value, if that makes sense. So a lot of times you could say, I value spending time with my kids or whatever, but if you're at work 12 hours a day, you really don't value it that much because you're not at home with your kids. So just making sure that you align that with Matthew 6:33 and seeking the kingdom of God.
That aligning with the Bible, which is I 100% agree with what we need to align with. That is kind of like the lighthouse that keeps us pointed in the right direction.
Yep.
All right, Tyler, what's the business challenge?
Business challenge, define winning beyond revenue this week. So think of what are some wins that don't involve money, don't involve numbers necessarily or sales or anything like that. Think about what winning might be. You got a couple ideas of what it could be?
Well, when you said that, it came to mind is if that is the only way that we're defining winning, we might need to reevaluate how we're defining it.
Yep, exactly.
You know, one thing that I thought about, and I know you got a story here to share.
Yep.
But when you see other people that you're able to help and see them achieve, I think that's winning in business. And one thing that we're doing this year, I know we're narrowing our focus, but we're reinvesting with doing training with some of our staff, and I want to see them grow. I want to invest in them. Tell them the story.
Yeah. So there's a couple boys here, a few weeks ago, I'd say, that we were in. I think Travis was doing the devotion that night, and he was talking about the Bible lesson was centered around David, and there was two boys.
One of my favorite Bible stories.
There's two boys in our class, and one of the boys, he's went through a lot, and he's came a long ways. He actually prayed to get saved last year, and so it's been really cool. He's been in our program for a long time now, and it's really cool to see the progress that he's made. But it's just really cool to see the transformation he's made. And so there was another boy that was sitting next to him that was really wanting to answer the question, and I don't remember.
It was for a prize.
It was for a prize, and so he was really wanting to win or he's wanting to answer the question to win this prize. And I think the answer was David, right?
I think so.
Something like that. So he was trying to think of what this answer was, but he couldn't get the answer. And so this other boy that had gotten prayed to get saved and stuff recently, a lot of times in the past he would have just been like, say the answer himself because he'd want the prize, and that's just human nature, I'd say, to be think of yourself first. Yeah,
for not getting the prize.
Yeah, he'd get upset for not getting the prize. Well, he actually leaned over to the other boy and kind of whispered like, "Hey, it's David." And the boy that was really wanting to win the prize, he said, "David." And so Travis said, "Oh yeah, good job, you got it." And so he handed him the prize. And the other boy was like, Travis had mentioned, he said he was expecting the other boy to be upset about it and kind of like, "Oh man, I didn't get the prize." But actually he was really happy and said, "Good job, nice job, you got the prize." And so he helped the other boy win the prize and was being selfless and helping him get the answer there so that he could win the prize because he saw how bad he wanted it. And so we all know people that have came a long ways, and to see that growth in him and to see his change in mentality and that he was looking out for another boy instead of himself, that is awesome. And that's definitely showing some growth. That's definitely winning the right way right there.
I was so impressed, and I could tell by that young man by sharing the answer, even though he didn't get the prize. You probably would have mistaken and thought he got the prize because he was so ecstatic about just helping the other boy win. It was more valuable than him winning a prize. It was awesome.
Yep. Well, for the legacy part of the challenge, we got, I want you to write down the character traits that you would like passed on to other people.
And maybe write down the ones you don't want passed on to other people too.
Yeah, you could think of that too. If you think of those first, it'll probably help you narrow down which ones you do want.
Yep, because that's what it's about, is we want to leave a lasting legacy. Now, Tyler, you've given the challenge, and now it's time.
Now it's time to execute.
Strategies for success.
We lead, we build, we bless. Faith in the fight, a vision inside. Legacy is our quest, strategies for success. With courage we invest, faith, business, legacy. That's our strategy for success.